Imagine waking up tomorrow morning and discovering that someone has deposited $1 billion into your bank account. Every bill is paid. Every loan is gone. You never have to work another day in your life. For the first few weeks, it would probably feel incredible. You could travel anywhere, buy almost anything, sleep in every morning, and never worry about a paycheck again. It sounds like the kind of freedom most people dream about. But here's a question I couldn't stop thinking about. What happens after that? Not after 3 days, after 3 months, or 3 years. What gets you out of bed on a random Tuesday when there is nowhere you have to be and nothing you absolutely need to do? I think almost all of us have imagined becoming financially free, but very few of us stop to ask, what comes after freedom? If work is optional, what fills your day? If you have achieved every goal you were chasing, what gives tomorrow any meaning at all? That question led me to another one. Why do humans seem to need purpose? Do we actually need it, or is purpose just another story we tell ourselves? The more I looked into it, the more I realized that this question appears everywhere. You see it in people who retire after working for 40 years. Many look forward to retirement for decades. They finally get there, and for a while, it's wonderful. No alarms, no meetings, no deadlines. But after the novelty wears off, many begin to feel restless. Without realizing it, they hadn't just lost a job. They had lost the structure around which their days had been organized. You see it in elite athletes too. Some spend 20 years training for a single Olympic event or world championship. They finally win the medal they have dreamed about since childhood. It is supposed to be the happiest moment of their lives. Yet many athletes have spoken openly about feeling strangely empty afterwards. They spent years climbing a mountain only to discover there wasn't another peak waiting about it. The same thing happens to entrepreneurs who sell the company they have spent decades building, students who finally graduate after years of studying, parents whose children leave home, or even people who spend years planning a wedding. We often imagine that achieving the goal will answer all our questions. Instead, it creates a new one. Now what? At first, I wondered whether this was just a modern problem. Maybe social media has made us restless. Maybe we have become addicted to achievement. But the more I read, the more I realized that this question is ancient. Civilizations separated by thousands of years all wrestled with it. The ancient Greeks asked, what makes a life flourish? Roman philosophers wondered how to live well regardless of circumstances. Buddhist traditions explored why chasing one desire after another never seems to satisfy us for long. And in the Bhagavad Gita, and in our own Bhagavad Gita, one of the greatest philosophical conversations in history begins because Arjuna suddenly loses his sense of purpose. We often think the Bhagavad Gita is about war. But if you look closely, the war is just the setting. The real question is much deeper. Arjuna doesn't suddenly become incapable of fighting. He becomes incapable of seeing why we should fight. His hands tremble, his bow slips, and he says he no longer sees any point in what he's about to do. Before Krishna speaks about action, devotion, meditation, or even knowledge, he addresses something much more fundamental. A human being who has lost the reason to act. That struck me because purpose isn't really about having goals. It's about having a reason to keep moving forward even when the excitement fades. Goals eventually end, but purpose continues. Modern psychology arrives at a surprisingly similar conclusion. Researchers often distinguish between pleasure and meaning. Pleasure is about feeling good in the moment. Meaning is about believing that your actions matter. Those aren't the same thing. You can spend an entire weekend doing things that are pleasurable. But imagine spending 6 months doing nothing meaningful. Most people eventually begin to feel empty, even if they are comfortable. It seems our minds are wired not just to experience pleasure, but to contribute, create, solve, teach, care, or build something that extends beyond immediate gratification. What's interesting is that the purpose doesn't have to be extraordinary. It doesn't require changing the world or becoming famous. A teacher helping students discover a love of learning. a parent raising children with patience and kindness, a carpenter building furniture that lasts for generations, a scientist trying to understand how nature works, a doctor caring for patients, a gardener nurturing life. None of these people may appear on television, yet their lives can be deeply purposeful. That made me question something else we hear all the time. You need to find your purpose. We speak as though purpose is hidden somewhere waiting to be discovered like buried treasure. But what if that's the wrong way to think about it? What if purpose isn't something you find? What if it's something you build? Something that grows every time you choose to care deeply about something worthwhile. This is where the Bhagavad Gita offers a fascinating perspective. Krishna doesn't hand Arjuna a new dream or a different career. He reminds him of his dharma. Dharma is one of those Sanskrit words that's difficult to translate with a single English word. It's often translated as duty, but that feels incomplete. Dharma also refers to living in harmony with what is right, fulfilling responsibilities wisely, and acting in a way that sustains both yourself and the world around you. It's less about blind obligation and more about understanding what is yours to do. What's remarkable is what Krishna doesn't promise. He doesn't promise Arjuna happiness. He doesn't promise Arjuna victory. He doesn't even promise Arjuna success. Instead, he shifts Arjuna's attention away from outcomes and back towards action. Act because the action itself is worth doing. Let excellence be your offering, not your bargaining chip with life. That idea feels surprisingly relevant today. We constantly ask, what will I get if I do this? A promotion? More money? Recognition? Followers? Validation? The Gita quietly asks a different question. Is this worth doing? Those are very different ways of approaching life. One depends entirely on results. The other depends on character. Perhaps that's why people who are deeply committed to meaningful work often continue even when nobody is watching. Scientists spend years investigating questions that may never make headlines. Teachers prepare lessons for students who may never remember their names. Parents wake up in the middle of the night to care for children without expecting applause. Their purpose isn't fueled by constant rewards. It's sustained by the belief that the work itself matters. So, do humans need purpose? I don't know if need is the right word in the biological sense. You can survive without purpose. You can eat, sleep, and continue existing. But if we are talking about truly living rather than simply surviving, purpose seems to play an extraordinary role. It organizes our attention. It helps us endure hardship. It gives ordinary days direction. It turns effort into something meaningful instead of something merely exhausting. I've also started wondering whether we have been asking the wrong question all along. Maybe the goal isn't to discover one grand purpose that lasts forever. Maybe purpose changes with every season of life. A young student, a new patient, a teacher, a caregiver, an artist, and an elderly grandparent may all have different purposes. Yet, each can live a deeply meaningful life. What remains constant isn't the specific role. It's the willingness to devote yourself to something that deserves your attention. The more I think about it, the less I believe purpose is a reward waiting for us at the end of success. If anything, success without purpose often leaves people asking even bigger questions. Perhaps purpose isn't the destination at all. Perhaps it's a thread that quietly gives each day meaning as we live in it. And maybe that's why people across cultures and across thousands of years kept returning to this same question, not because they had all the answers, but because they understood something we often forget. Before we ask how to live a successful life, we first have to ask a much simpler question. What is worth living for?